feeling embarrassed and old because you leak when you laugh or jump or cough? Me too. And I just got tired of saying no to activities like group hikes or going dancing. My guest and I are both women of a certain age who have found the answers to embarrassing leaks and demoralizing diapers. We've helped hundreds of women find freedom from bladder accidents. Today, we're going to give you the 5 basic tools to bring your bladder back from the brink. By the time you're done with this podcast, you'll be able to confidently ask your healthcare team for the support you need to get rehabbing your plumbing. Welcome to episode 44 of the Midlife Reset podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Gordon. I'm a yoga therapist and a mindfulness coach. And today we're going to bring clarity to why your pelvic floor bottoms out in midlife and give you the astonishingly simple answers to getting your confidence back. Please welcome my guest, Kim Wenger-Hall from Flourishing Third Wellness. She is a fellow yoga teacher, certified health coach, and artist specializing in pelvic floor health, chair yoga, and art therapy. She has dedicated the last 10 years to educating women about their pelvic floor. Rooted in evidence-based practices, she provides tools, insights, and community to navigate aging as a vibrant, expansive chapter, not just a countdown of years, but a celebration of what's possible. So welcome, Kim. I'm really super pumped to have this conversation.
I am too. I'm a little nervous. It's like I think my
Oh,
second podcast ever, so it's
oh,
very
well,
exciting.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm almost your first.
Ah, yes, almost my first.
Now, Kim, we have promised that we are going to deliver 5 things that people don't know, for the most
Yeah.
part, about how to keep their plumbing bouncy and responsive. This is
Yes.
such an important topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really remarkable. I never thought I would be focusing all of my work on pelvic floor health. Like 90% of the traffic on my website, on my classes, on my courses is pelvic floor health and mostly around incontinence.
Hmm.
And never in my wildest dreams did I think like my high school classmates would be seeing like post after post on like bladder leaks. Like, but this is the conversation we need to be having because nobody had these conversations with us earlier. And the biggest takeaway I try to give people is that pelvic floor health, whether it's bladder leaks or prolapse or rectus or diastasis recti, whatever your pelvic floor issues are, it's a pressure management problem. So whether you're loading improperly, you're not strong enough, there's some weak areas, you're disconnected mind to body, it's pressure management that when we learn to manage our stressors, both physical stressors out there and our esoteric stressors like politics, finance, relationships, when we manage those as well as our internal stressors and pressure, like how we sit, how we stand, it makes all the difference. Like, oh, I'm mismanaging pressure in my body. Like there's a finite amount of pressure that my pelvic floor can stand. And so, yeah, that's where I
And
always
we're going to
begin.
look at this today from very much a yoga lens, which is something that doesn't get talked about very often. I've had other guests on the podcast where we talked about the hormonal aspects or a pelvic floor physiotherapist, but today we're going to look at this from a yoga lens, which is very holistic. The
Mm,
first thing, I don't think anybody hardly talks about this, Kim, in terms of what's going on with your pelvic floor, and that is your thoracic spine. Now, the
yeah,
thoracic spine is the middle part of your back
yeah,
around the shoulder blades. Why
yep.
is that so important for what goes on down south?
It's such a great question. So if we think about the diaphragm here and the pelvic floor here, so as we inhale, the diaphragm drops down and the pelvic floor softens and lengthens. And so it's managing its own pressure. So in a healthy system, it goes like this. And we don't just expand, we don't just have a rising and falling breath. We have an expanding and contracting breath in 3 dimensions. So if we think about the breath like this little jointed ball, like wherever the breath can't expand, like the pressure has to go somewhere. The body prioritizes the breath. When we stop breathing, we die, right? So the
Right.
body's going to be like, well, if my upper back is tight, I still have to get a good breath in. So I'm going to shrug the shoulders up and I'm going to flare the ribs out and I'm going to strain the low back, or I'm going to round forward even more to get a breath. And all sorts of compensation patterns happen. So as we age, we tend to round forward. Our vertebrae tend to shrink. They usually don't shrink this way. They usually shrink at the anterior aspect of the vertebra this way. So
Like
if
the
we can
hunchback, the classic
find,
old lady hunchback.
yeah. And so if, and many of us, as we were, growing breasts as teenagers, I know I did. I walked around like this. Don't look at me.
Oh, you got
And
boobs?
I do have boobs.
I missed out on the boobs.
Yes, I do have boobs.
So that rounded out posture,
Mhm.
that humpback,
Yeah, and
and which we
humpback and
have when,
stiffness.
we're working so much at our desks all the time,
Mhm.
that's
Yep,
holding back our diaphragm, our thoracic diaphragm from moving, which
right.
affects our pelvic floor. So what's the fix on that, Kim? What's the
Fix is
fix?
to build that resilience in the thoracic spine, to
Ah,
get the shoulder blades, to get the scapula to be able to rotate around and up. So have mobility in the shoulder blades and have mobility in the thoracic spine. And that
yeah.
means chest strength, that subscapular strength, and bringing your head back in space, which we'll probably talk on a little bit
Yeah,
later.
that's good. That's going to be one of our points. So something like for our yogi friends, like a cat cow.
Cat cow is great.
Cat cow. So
And
simple postures we see in yoga
mhm,
class all the time. Okay. Now, the second thing that a lot of people really get confused about, we're going to talk about core strength and why core strength is so important for pelvic floor function. What about sit-ups?
no.
No, sit-ups are stupid, right?
Well, so I like to show this kind of standing up because I think visuals make a lot more sense. So sit-ups work our rectus abdominis, our six-pack abs. They're another forward moving muscle, right? They move
Right.
us this way. And they're pretty surface. So we don't tend to access our interior and exterior obliques and our transversus abdominis, the wraparound abs that have more of a diagonal muscle fiber content. And it gives us this wraparound stability back to
Like a
front to
girdle,
back,
right? Like a
up,
deep
down,
girdle.
down to up. Yeah. And the diaphragm like sits right here, right? The pelvic floor is here. So if we cinch navel to spine, can the diaphragm move? No.
No, no.
So our pelvic floor is like, wait, what are we doing? We can't move. So
Yeah,
it's just more pressure. So that
yeah.
pressure has to go somewhere. And
And that's
so,
where the pelvic floor gives out on you.
mhm. And so
Yeah,
thinking, how can I find good core engagement without limiting the movement of the diaphragm?
right.
So without limiting the rib expansion and contraction. So how can I find three-dimensional breath first, and then that
Mhm.
core support that allows the pelvic floor to move?
So,
And
what posture do you like for core that really supports what you're talking about, Kim?
everything,
Everything.
everything. So the one kind of cue that I like, instead of navel to spine, which we hear
Right?
all the time, is
Yeah.
waistline back. So a little
Waist back.
shorthand is waistline back, kind of in
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
Because we can still breathe into that.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a shorthand, but it's so when we're doing core work, it could be anything. Because when we forget about that core, we collapse inward and we round forward. But
Yeah.
when we find length here, so it's kind of like every shape, but all of the core shapes like chaturanga, plank, downward facing dog, everything is core work when we let it be. But
Right.
to soften that core work, it's light core engagement where the
Yeah.
breath can expand into.
It's not sucking the belly in.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because so many people have the flat belly as their goal in their fitness journey, including yoga, and bellies need to be able to breathe. Your ribs need to be able to move. Okay, now we're going to get into texting head, forward head posture. Why does that affect pelvic floor?
So everything is connected, and we have these beautiful trains of fascia. And there are many reasons why, like forward head posture, kind of wrecks the pelvic floor. But one of them is all the connective tissue in the body, like it wraps around the whole container, and it gives us structure. And so the spine functions best when it's in its natural curve. So we have a little bit of rounding in the upper back, the neck curves a little bit this way, the low back curves a little bit this way, the tailbone tucks under that way. But when we break that up, so anatomically, this limits our container, our structural integrity. So even if you have a nice three-dimensional breath, the pelvic floor is moving with the diaphragm, and then you drop your head forward, your core can't work. So the structural integrity just falls out. So that's one reason.
Yeah. So in our yoga postures, we're
Hmm.
often cued to align our head at the top of the spine. But you
Yeah,
know what I often notice in my yoga classes when you're teaching people a forward fold, it could be a seated forward fold or a standing forward fold or a half forward fold, like
yeah.
Ardha Uttanasana. I
Hmm.
notice people letting that rounded out head dropped sort of
Yeah.
posture rather than having an elongated neutral spine with those
Yep.
beautiful natural curves as they come forward.
Hmm.
So we want to take our heads into the posture before our
Yeah.
whole spine has come. So
Yeah.
that's one thing you can do is just to remember, right? To keep your head in alignment with your spine when you're moving.
Right. And whenever the head's out of that alignment, you can even feel in your abdominals through your core that everything tanks. And it's pressure management. So it's an inability to manage the pressure when that like 11 pounds of the head moves forward. Something is keeping us from falling out of our chair.
Mhm.
So, and that's usually the low back and even the hip flexors.
And we haven't said anything about shoulder joints, but I just feel like I need to just kind of bring this in. We're only on point number 3 and I'm already deviating. But so many women are vulnerable in the shoulders. Frozen shoulders, a huge issue for older women. And all of what we're talking about supports healthy shoulder function. So even if you don't have a bladder issue, if you're like
Yeah,
really lucky that way, you
yeah,
still need to hear this. Okay, number
definitely.
4, pelvic tilt. What's going on, Kim?
So I love the demonstration. And for those of you probably listening on audio, right, you have some video, but standing neutral pelvis is usually hip points, front hip points in line with pubic bone. And so when we're spilling forward, we're kind of crunching into the low back, and we might
Like
even be in
wearing high
posture.
heels. That's the posture when you have high heels on,
Yeah.
which I lived in.
And then the other one is your posterior pelvic tilt, where your femurs are jammed forward in the hip socket and your glutes are tensed, especially those sitting bone hugging muscles. They're really clenched. So in
Yeah.
either posture, our pelvic floor gets confused
So
because
either the high-heeled posture or like when you're pregnant, you're really got a big heavy belly and you're walking around trying to cradle your belly.
yeah,
That's the second posture. Yeah. Neither one is mountain pose.
neither one is mountain pose, and to find that more or less neutral, and all of us tip forward to some extent, either way at different times, but to more often than not, even in your yoga poses. So noticing in your lunge pose, are you dipping way forward or are you tucking under? And what's that doing to your core container? What's that doing to your pressure management? So in either way, tipping forward or tucking under, your breath can't function effectively. Your core can't really function as it might. That doesn't mean never go into an anterior or posterior tilt, but to do so mindfully um, with that awareness of what's happening, what's the chain
Mhm.
reaction there.
Yeah. Or and holding that posture for long periods of time, like wearing high heels all day on your feet, which we used to do back in the day. Number 5, and I think this is maybe the most important thing we're going to talk about in this podcast. What does my state of nerves, my autonomic nervous system have to do with my bladder? My bladder's full or it's not, right?
Uh, yes, and when we're disconnected from our body, when we're in a state of stress and we're thinking, um, our 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 kind of lizard brain, our like most basic human parts don't prioritize bladder function. It's going to be like, well, I still live if I have a leaky bladder. But if you have a busy brain and it's thinking email, money, relationships, all this stuff, it thinks that there's something to watch out for. And so the muscles are going to tense up and get ready to fight, get ready to run. And one of the muscles we talk about is the psoas, which is this fun hip flexor slash core muscle. It's a postural stability muscle, and it starts at the same fascial attachments as the diaphragm and goes all the way down into the thigh bone, all the way wraps around. And it's one of these muscles that's deeply connected to fight or flight, that pre-humans, pre-modern day humans, when they needed to run, or even now, if there's trouble and we need to run, we go into a stance that activates that psoas. But we also activate that when we get a stressful call, when we're in traffic. And even driving and traffic mimics some of that getting ready to run posture. So the nervous system over thousands of years says, oh, we have something to worry about? Cool. I know how to worry about that. I'm going to do that really well. I'm going to hold on to tension. And that tension limits our ability to manage the pressure. And it has this feedback loop of, oh, we know how to hold on to pressure. We don't know how to let go. And so the muscles get tight, they get tired, and they get confused because they can't move with breath. And so we always reprioritize the breath. And that's why I love yoga is it's such a breath oriented practice. We feel a three-dimensional inhale, we feel a three-dimensional exhale. We feel it everywhere in our body. We allow it to expand and we allow it to contract. And whenever that can't happen, we just need to go, oh, that's interesting. What can I shift? What can I change? How can I rebalance my pressure management, both stress management and am I holding my breath? Am I sucking navel to spine as a stress management coping mechanism? Am I
Hmm.
clenching my jaw? Like
Oh,
when we
all the
clench our
time.
jaw.
So,
And
Kim, what is your favorite yoga posture for releasing the psoas?
probably lying on your back, probably a restorative posture, lying on your back
You're
where you're
talking my language, girlfriend.
Yeah, where you're lying down over a bolster and just gently letting one leg soften down and lengthen. Um, and that's a lovely one because you could just lie down. Your hips are a little elevated. You want to maintain that neutral pelvis. It's okay to let the pelvis tip forward a little bit. That can sometimes give you some length. Sometimes a sandbag on the top of the hip can be lovely.
No,
Um,
I got to go
yeah,
do that.
and just
Something that I often recommend to my clients if they don't have a lot of restorative props or if they're in a bit of a hurry is just to throw their legs up the couch or the legs up a chair and
yep,
just breathe.
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And be aware that that pelvic floor moves the same way your thoracic diaphragm does and just let it do its job.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah.
just,
So Kim, before we finish, I want to make sure people know about the amazing resources that you have. You have a diagnosis, something that you can use to help identify the pelvic floor symptoms that you have. You call it the decoder.
yeah. So that one's really fun because we usually think about the garden variety pelvic floor symptoms of incontinence, prolapse, diastasis, but we don't always think about tailbone pain or sitting bone pain or hip flexor pain or upper back tightness that we have all of these different symptoms like pain with tampon insertion. Um, all sorts of different things go into this world of pelvic floor dysfunction. And even things like plantar fasciitis can contribute to or even be exacerbated by pelvic floor health. And so everything is connected. So the tool that I created, it's a little piece called, part of my Unleakable program. And it's this little freebie PDF. It's a clickable PDF that says, oh, I have TMJ. Oh, I have tight shoulders. Oh, I have this. And it's sort of
Yeah.
this go like, oh, isn't that interesting? And what I love about it is you can take it to your physical therapist and say, hey, I noticed all of these things. Let's unravel them together.
Yeah.
And
It
what's the
helps you
lowest
connect the
hanging
dots,
fruit?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all related. Everything is connected, and that's the good news, bad news of this. But it starts with the breath and pressure management is,
What we've been talking about. Kim
yeah.
also has a 7-day pelvic floor challenge. She also has some great resources on her website to look at your spinal mobility around the shoulder blades, that thoracic spine. And now you know how important all these pieces are as they come together. Kim, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your
Thank you for
service
having me.
with us.
I love the work that we do, and I'm so glad that you and I connected. And I've been diving into your previous podcast guests, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it is all connected.
Well, share
Um,
with your friends. This
I
podcast has been
will.
so much fun to do. I've met so many amazing people, and there is so much wisdom. So share with your friends, everybody. Recommend it. And thank you, Kim, so much for coming on.
Thank
I
you.
really hope we can collaborate on more stuff together.
That would be so fun. All right, we'll see
Namaste.
you later. Namaste. Bye bye.
Hey, girlfriend. I'm so glad that you're listening to this podcast. But I wonder if you wanted to take the work a bit deeper. Would you like to feel lighter, sleep better, and wake up energized again? Join my 60-minute free masterclass to learn the 5 steps that help me lose 25 pounds, reset my body, and finally feel calm, strong, and confident again. You can register on my website, and I really hope to see you soon.